It's no secret that I'm a big fan of Keychron, especially the K6, which I deemed the perfect entry into the custom market a while back. And while I stand by my words, I'd say the space has undoubtedly changed since then. Or maybe I'm just closer to the deep end and got a considerably different view from back here. So what happened since? Well, Glorious released their GM&K Pro, Keychron immediately followed up with the Q1, and many other smaller or bigger manufacturers began offering much more wallet-friendly alternatives. We now have more accessible options than ever before, like the Mojo 68, which during the Kickstarter was set at a friendly $169, or the fantastic looking Icky 68 Aurora, which starts at $129 for the barebones kit and $195 fully loaded. With entries like these, the sub $200 space is starting to heat up, combining quality and features rivaling those costing twice or sometimes even 3 times as much, while nowadays offering similar or almost matching feature sets. With such a rapidly changing market, does Keychron still have something here that's unique enough to make it a worthy challenger, or are they maybe just a little late? On paper, this is everything one would want from a top-tier custom mechanical keyboard. Really, if you'd ask anyone for a wish list of features, it's likely the Q2 spec sheet would match most of it. But then there's even more. You get the Keychron typical Windows and Mac toggle, although missing the wireless functionality of its siblings, and the very friendly starting price of $149 or $179 for either the barebones or fully loaded kit, and of course the prospect of it being permanently in stock, which as of now is not the case, but hopefully will change. For the latter version, you also get these new keycaps from Keychron, sporting an OSA profile, which is a first for them, I believe. If you've never heard of OSA before, it's a combination of OEM and SA style profiles, hence the name. Think of them as taller cherries with an SA on top. I really like the looks of them too, but they're not as remarkable as the first impression might convey. Their renders were kinder than reality, so to speak. There are also a few oddities that bug me. For example, there's a different font used for the alphanumeric keys when compared to the rest of the board. These are very neat and clean, with elegant slim lines almost akin to a variation of Helvetica Neue. The function and modifier keys such as the backspace, enter and so on look like a silly kindergarten version by comparison. Yes, they are lowercase, but even accounting for that, they seem off, almost as if they came from a different set, or if somebody only bought the rights to the uppercase version of whatever the alphas are using. If we look closer, the off-putting lettering extends further because the characters don't even match up on the same key. The A and E on the backspace, for example, look as if they had a bit more for lunch than the rest. And the S from the caps lock hasn't eaten in days. Otherwise the caps are fine, the surface is incredibly smooth with the edges being sharper than usual, giving it a unique typing feel. But maybe you don't care about these caps. You're gonna put your own mark in the world and get the barebones kit and turn this beauty into the decked out custom endgame monster you longed for. As previously mentioned, the Q2 has an all CNC'd aluminum body with a 2-piece construction. Like so many other boards in this space, it follows a well-established formula. The side profile is brutally honest too. There is no design trickery attempting to create an illusion of seamlessness. This is where the 2 pieces come together, and that's exactly how it looks and works. At the bottom we have color matching feet as well as 8 screws made out of brass, holding everything together. Removing those allows us to lift the underbelly, which then reveals a very slim piece of pre-installed foam along with a protective layer below it. These 2 layers are also glued together and into the frame for some reason. Not by a lot, so separating them was fairly easy. There's nothing else going on in the basement, except for 2 groves where the daughterboard's ribbon cable goes into, and one on the right side, underneath the rotary knob. I'm not sure if this serves a function, as the encoder doesn't protrude further than any of the other keys. If we take a look at the upper half of our Q2, we can see the cable along with the lonely power LED, which can't be seen when the board is closed. I found this a bit sad, because it glows with all its might, but nobody will ever know. Once we disconnect the ribbon cable and remove the knob, we can then lift the PCB along with the plate out of the top frame, revealing the insides of the Q2 along with a convenient hole in the middle to use it as a keychain. Terrible jokes aside, the holes are used for the stems from the top frame, which along with the side railings contain multiple rubber bumpers to absorb any harsh vibrations that might be transferred throughout the frame caused by your overly expressive typing. Finally, we have the daughterboard, which is the only part that is screwed into the frame. That is because this board is using a gasket-style mounting system. What is a gasket-style mounting system, you ask? Well, it means that the plate has these foamy gaskets to absorb and soften your impact when typing. This makes for an incredibly smooth ride, kinda like an old Cadillac, where instead of a sporty, firm response, you get a cushioned, soft landing every time you bottom out.
What about a dip? Do you like a dip as well as a chip?
Yes.
You like a chip and a dip?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Bad news, I have no dip.
Oh.
I am so sorry. I am completely dipless.
This might not be for everyone, and you can't adjust it. I mean, technically you can use firmer gaskets than those out of the box, but this is what you get, and I like it. And if you're wondering, no, it doesn't make it feel mushy or unresponsive, it just makes it a bit softer. Pleasantly softer. Removing the caps and switches reveals the aluminum plate, which can be taken off after removing the 6 screws on the back. This reveals the really nice dampening foam in between. The PCB looks good too. I didn't expect anything flashy, and there isn't, but there is this little message commemorating Keychron's second foray into the fully custom world. There are also no flex cuts here. This was probably not trending yet when Keychron designed it, but I'm sure it's just a matter of time before they jump on this as well. We also have these new screw-in stabilizers, first spotted in the Q1 and also sporting that two-tone green color scheme, which you really have to like, I suppose. Well, I don't, but fear not, Cherry and Duroc are both supported and you can replace them with one of those if you want. Mine weren't all that well lubed either, but adding an additional layer wasn't that difficult and well worth it if you ask me. There are also different plate materials to choose from and of course modifications one can undertake, but I'll get to that later. Now let's compare it to the aforementioned competition. How well does this stack up? The short answer is really well. That's no surprise either. I mean, the Q1, although never in my possession, has been very well received, and if you've seen any other videos of the Q2, you know that it has been getting a lot of positive feedback, and I can understand why, but it isn't perfect. First, let's talk about its form. It has that fixed angle which all customs have and is more elevated than most, which I do like, but its chin is also taller. Take a look at the keywork or the meridian here. Although it doesn't look like much, it is noticeable when typing. I'm not a wrist rest aficionado either. I really don't like extra pieces on my desk, but I do reckon that one might need to look into this if you find that typing gets a bit crampy after a while. The finish is good too, but I don't know what it is. Maybe it's even unconsciously, but comparing it to the slightly higher priced Mega from Keywork, it's just not as good. That one, by the way, is the closest thing in price I own that I can compare it to when it comes to the metal construction. The Meridian steps it up even further, but that thing costs more than double. The Q2 also has a bit of a hollowish sound when you flick at least when compared to the highly dense Mega. Mind you, it is a much slimmer board, but still, if you could touch both, you would know immediately what I mean. It's also slightly less elegant, although this is up to anyone's taste. For me, I don't personally like the screw holes in the front and back, which are probably there due to cost savings, but I'll gladly take this visual hit over compromising materials or features. Surprisingly, there's absolutely zero branding. Nothing. Not even a sticker or anything. Every board I had so far, even with minimal details, had at least a name engraved somewhere, but not here. If you didn't know, you would never figure out that this was from Keychron, without opening it up of course. Then we have the rotary knob, which is the best one I've used so far. I don't know if they just used a better encoder than the one on the Work Louder boards or the Frankenstein, but it feels great and the action is smooth and very responsive. The knob is easily removed too, and I believe it is made of metal, although it feels super light. Whatever it is, it's the best one yet. Thanks to the gaskets, the push mechanism is also a lot more pleasant to use. I hated it on the Work Louder because it felt so unnecessarily harsh every time I triggered it. Here, with the slightly recessed position and the heavy frame, it feels like a genuinely quick and accessible button. Regarding the functionality, I will once again refer to my Work Louder video, where I mentioned that the encoders can do a lot of things, but as always are limited to what VIA can and can't do. That is, if I could get it to recognize the Q2 in the first place. This is an area where I found that Keychron's approach is a bit lacking. For any other board I've ever used, VIA, if supported, just worked out of the box. Here you have to download a JSON file from the product page and load it into VIA manually in order to recognize it every time you want to change something. Not only this, but it took me a while to figure out how to actually get that JSON in. First, you have to unplug the board. Open up VIA, go to the Settings tab, enable the design mode, switch to it, and then drag the file in. Then plug in the board again and there you go, VIA like it should be from the get-go. Remember, you have to do this every time you want to change something. If you accidentally close VIA, you have to start all over. So keep that nasty JSON file around if you're a frequent adjuster. Alright, so I tried out all the mods that I was able to do with the supplies I had at hand, which is not a lot. First, let's look at something that's not a mod at all, and that's the plate. When I ordered the Q2, the PC version was the only one available and cost me an extra 15 bucks. By now you can get the FR4 for the same price or the brass plate for an additional 35. Here's the board without any mods and looped Keychron black inks on the stock aluminum plate and then the PC plate. With it, the typing is even softer, especially on the edges. It also makes the bending less consistent. I personally didn't like it all that much and will be sticking to the stock aluminum one. But at 15 bucks, it's also a great way to discover the differences for curious ones like myself. There are certainly worse ways to spend your money. Moving on, I didn't have any other stabs at hand, but as they don't need any clipping, I think the included ones, besides the looks, are just fine. Just make sure that they are loose. I also wanted to replace the included foam, but unfortunately had nothing that was thin enough. Anything thicker would have hindered the gaskets from doing their job, so I left it as is. But I did use some tape, which worked out pretty well. Finally, I replaced all the caps with a set from GMK, and here's how everything sounds. Before we get into the final wording, let's look at some neat extras I didn't mention up until now. Removing the spacebar, for example, gives you direct access to the reset button, as well as the only visible branding on the board, even if it's on the inside. The Windows and Mac switcher on the back is made of metal. It's a bit rattly when you use it and it felt more like plastic, but it is actually metal. If you take a look at the construction, it's also interesting to see that they used a piece of foam for it to slide around on. In the box, you also get your usual fare of Keychron goodies, like an additional set of Windows modifiers, a good keycap puller, a terrible switch puller, a nicely braided USB-C to C cable, along with a C to A adapter. And finally, you get a comically small screwdriver, along with a flimsy Allen wrench. The Q2 is everything I was hoping it would be. It's already fantastic out of the box and with little effort can be easily elevated. Yet I also feel a bit underwhelmed. I don't know why, but it's missing a little specialness. I was hoping that the keycaps would become a new favorite of mine, but I have to say, in retrospect, I probably would have gone with the bare-bones kit. That is, if the fully decked one wasn't such a great deal. Just think of it for a second. The bare-bones knob version costs $159. The fully assembled one, which includes a full set of caps and switches, costs a measly 20 bucks more. That's $20 for a full set of keycaps and switches. You probably won't find a better deal than this, even if you don't use it. Which is exactly what I was thinking, which is why I ordered it with the Keychron G Pro Blues. I wanted to see what clickies were like, and I gotta tell you, they're not for me. Compared to something much cheaper like my beloved K6, which I honestly still think is a great deal and holds up pretty well, it's a great alternative and well worth the upgrade if you can spring for it. You're gonna lose the wireless connectivity, but you gain a lot more modification possibilities, sound and feel. In the same price range as the Q2, you will encounter the Mojo 68, which is really good too. Not metal, but feels fantastic nonetheless, and at least in this plastic color scheme, which also included the keycaps, has a certain amount of special sauce that make it a bit more fun and exciting. How long that will last though, is a different question. On the more understated side, and for a tiny bit more of your hard-earned money, you can get a fully assembled Tofu 65 at $199 from KBD fans. I never tried a Tofu, but if this guy likes it, it's probably really good. Lastly, in the still affordable section of this dreaded pastime activity, we have the Keepwork Mega. At a starting price of €235 without the keycaps, you're gonna have to dig a little deeper into your wallet. But personally, I think it's a consideration you should think about. Even as I type this script, I have switched back to the Mega because I just really like how this feels, and I'll probably stick to it, at least until spring. It's not to say that the Q2 doesn't have its flair. It's a practically foolproof choice for anyone who wants to start off or get into this hobby with serious intent. It's near flawless in its price range, and one thing that could make it a dead ringer is the availability, which as of now isn't that great, but if Keychron can keep this board in stock, it's something that won't be as easily beat by the competition, especially for quick impulse shoppers like myself. Its accessibility also reaches a bit further. For any unsuspecting civilian typist, the Keychron brand might have popped up somewhere before, meaning it's a brand that appears less threatening. Not saying that RamaWorks makes people poop their pants, but well, maybe their prices do. Regardless, they serve very different audiences. Keychron is marrying mainstream appeal with custom values here, which is what makes this board a great recommendation for anyone who's even remotely interested. So even if the party is getting crowded and Keychron might not be the first one attending anymore, being late in this case could be considered fashionable. Hey, thanks so much for stopping by and staying till the end. I really hope you enjoyed everything about the Q2. By the way, there have been other people asking about sub $200 boards, so if you know any of those, please mention them. I'd be interested too. Anyway, thanks so much for watching again, and see you in the next one. Bye!